Welcome and thank you again so much for being here. The plan is that this is going to be just a helpful, useful time and a helpful, useful investment for you. One of the ways that Hustle works is the plan is to just cram as much in as possible. So what that means is that for some of us, some of the talks, you might be like, yep, this is a good reminder, but I've got this bit. But then there may be just a little piece or a little part of it that is new or helpful or insightful in some way. And that's how we roll, as much as we possibly can. Perhaps a bit too fast, maybe, or a bit too overwhelming, perhaps, but time for questions and clarifying and all that kind of thing. So this year, in case you forgot, this year's theme is vision, building leaders with vision. And vision is a somewhat controversial topic, maybe not really, but a little bit. Some people think that it's everything in leadership. Some people think it's nothing. My guess is most of us aren't really sure what it is or when we're doing it. And so if we're going to build leaders with vision, it'd be good if we knew what we were talking about. And so that's the hope for this next little piece. We're going to do this before lunch. We're going to clarify what it is we're talking about when we talk about vision. And later on, we're going to come to why does it matter and how do I do it. And then tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit about how vision fits in with Leadership Pipeline. We talk about Leadership Pipeline a fair bit at Hustle. And so just how does vision work with that? And how does Leadership Pipeline work? We don't think that's like the key elixir to everything. Pipeline doesn't solve anyone's problems, but I do think it's one of the key kind of missing pieces in the puzzle of our sort of leadership apparatus. So we'll talk more about that. And if Leadership Pipeline things are new for you, tomorrow we'll do a little crash course on the broad Leadership Pipeline thing. People talk about that and use that kind of language, and not always the same way that I do and that Hustle does. So we'll come to that. But when we say building leaders with vision, again, we mean multiple things. We mean building leaders by the means of vision. We mean building leaders who themselves have vision in a way that enables them to capture the big vision that you have, and then that they can create and pursue a vision as well. So there's lots for us to kind of touch on and dive in on, but first of all, what is vision? What are we talking about? The first thing to say is that people use the term vision in multiple ways. And the trick is not to get too hung up on the taxonomy of all those things, of labels and what it is. Labels are not the most important thing. What matters is what's in the box. And vision is often grouped with mission, it's often grouped with strategy, words like this. Again, two words that maybe a lot of us don't even know what they mean. Even people who use them all the time don't really know what they mean. And you've got values, you've got purpose. So you've got vision, mission, strategy, values, purpose, all these buzzwords, terminology floating around, and it's easy when people like me use words like this to kind of just lose the will to live. Buzzwords, yuck. What's happening here with all these different words is it's a struggle, it's a fight for clarity. That's what all these words are trying to do. Each of these different buzzwords, jargon words, are trying to unearth some clarity from maybe a different perspective or through different lenses. They're trying to answer slightly different questions. Here's a bunch of questions that I think these kind of words are trying to answer. Questions like, why do we exist? Questions like, what's the main thing that we're trying to achieve? Questions like, what's the overall plan? What's important to us? Who are we and how do we roll? What's the next mountain that we need to climb? What's top priority right now? Those kind of questions. And it's all that clarity. They're all slightly different, but they're all also connected. You might be able to see how some of them kind of connect with each other or overlap with each other. But in one sense, even this is a bit simplistic. You know, that last one, what's top priority right now? What does right now mean? Right now? Right now in the next 3 months? Right now in the next 6 months? Right now this year? It's more complicated. Same with what's the next mountain that we're going to climb? As in, like this weekend, Sunday's coming, I need to preach my sermon. Is that the mountain that is it 3 years away? We're planting a church, we need to get ourselves ready. What mountain? How far away are we talking? It's more complicated. And some of these answers might be different depending on where you are in your church or in your organization or in your school or whatever. The next mountain we need to climb might be different for the kids' ministry as it is for the whole church. Or it might not be. Or it might be a different thing for the junior school as it is for the senior school, as it is for the whole school. The complexity, it just easily multiplies. But let's try and just pause and come back to the heart of this thing, which is the clarity that these questions are trying to fight for. And they're all vaguely interconnected, and vision is a particularly challenging one to kind of nail down. But I think that these are most of the key questions that we're asking. Maybe not all of them, but enough of them. And again, at the risk of being kind of oversimplifying, broadly speaking, here's where I think the jargon words fit with all of these questions. This is just what I think. This isn't necessarily absolutely right or wrong. It's the answers to the questions that's important. But I think this is where they all fit. Why do we exist? Purpose. What's the main thing we're trying to achieve? Mission. What's the overall plan? Strategy. What's important to us? Values. Who are we and how do we roll? Flavor. What's the next mountain that we need to climb? Vision. What's top priority right now? Focus. Focuses. Foci. And we could talk about each one of these for hours and hours. But for now, we're zooming in on vision, which I think in these questions, what's the next mountain that we need to climb? Now, as soon as I even say that, put that kind of label out there, some of you will think, and maybe you already are, that's in the ballpark, but that's not exactly what I mean when I say vision. I don't necessarily mean the mountain that we need to climb. And I would respond with, you're probably right. Like I said, vision is a particularly challenging concept to crystallize and to get our hands on. What is the definition of it? But here is my best attempt to crystallize vision. I think vision is a picture of the preferred future that we're working towards. Something like that. Where are we trying to get to? It's our preferred future. Like, if we did nothing, then we would probably end up over here. But if we would prefer to end up over here, we might do a whole bunch of stuff. And if we did a whole bunch of stuff, I reckon we might end up over here instead of over here. And this would be the version of the future that we would prefer. Vision. Now, vision is not a vision statement. And a mission is not a mission statement. Don't get those two things confused. Not everyone, lots of people love to talk about vision statements, mission statements. And we've got to write it down and craft it and get the committee, and we'll come back with a draft, and then we'll have our vision statement. Maybe that's good, but it's not the same thing as vision. Vision statement is not vision. But this is still a little bit kind of conceptual, abstract. Let's get a bit more concrete. Vision is it's a normal thing. You do it all the time. It's, again, people like me can talk in a way that makes it feel like vision is a special thing, and it's a special leadership thing, and only leaders can do it, and you need to work really hard at it. But vision is normal. And you do it all the time. None of us know the future, obviously, but we all have preferences for how we want the future to look and what we hope it'll be like and what we're working towards. Having a vision is normal. It's not spooky, it's not a big deal. Most people have some kind of vision for their lives, where you hope it will go. You probably have all kinds of visions for different facets of what you want to do and who you are and who you want to become. Pictures of a preferred future. It could be a bit of a longer time frame. I want to learn to play the violin. I want to go to Uluru. Whatever. I want to learn how to do sweet graffiti. I want to learn how to do sweet graffiti. That's a vision for my life. It's what you want to see happen. It's where you want to go. It's what you're planning on doing. And you're going to do some of those things and it's going to become real. But sometimes vision is small. I need new socks. I do need new socks, by the way. It doesn't need to be all complicated, though. You don't need to craft a vision statement. I will intrepidly acquire high-quality, low-cost, manufactured woolen footwear in order to enable pain-free and blister-preventing movement between multiple places whilst ensuring maximum fashion and utility consciousness. That's my vision statement. Sometimes buying new socks is just buying new socks. And so you don't need a statement. But it is a picture of the preferred future. It's the vision for the future of my life. It's not a very inspiring vision, I'll admit that, but it's a vision of the future. My point is, it's normal. You do this all the time. What we want to learn is how to do it and maybe sharpen what we already do. How do we find and uncover and create and discover and communicate and articulate a vision for our church or our ministry or our school or whatever? But vision is normal. Back 10 years ago, I was writing Wisdom in Leadership, and I knew they weren't going to publish a hardcover book because they don't do that and they're very expensive, and no one thought anyone would buy that book. So they weren't going to invest lots in it anyways. And I, though, really love hardcover books. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could find a way to turn this book into a hardcover? And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a way, if I ever wrote any more books, that I could design the book in such a way that they all linked in with each other and looked aesthetically pleasing together. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool? I would like my books to have bright, colourful covers for whatever reason. All of my books are brown or white or cream, which is fine, but I would like them to be colourful. And the author doesn't get to say what the book looks like or even what it's called, or at least I don't anyway. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if they were colourful and they could interconnect with each other? And so that was the vision. It wasn't important, it didn't help anyone, but it was my vision. And so I got a picture, I think, of this is what happened, this is what the books look like, where they interconnect yellow and blue, and then the blue becomes the blue with a bit of pink, and then the pink becomes the pink with a bit of green, and the next book that comes out in a couple of weeks will be green with a bit of purple, and so on. Now, is this important? No. Is it a big deal? No. Does it change anybody's life? No. But it was the future that I preferred. And so I did things, and a whole bunch of other people helped me, and this is now the future that exists that wouldn't exist if we didn't do those things. This was just my vision. Again, not important. But the point is, vision is a picture of the future that you are then working and praying towards. And then you can see how it kind of attaches to the question, what's the next mountain that we're going to climb? It makes some sense. But maybe, again, you can feel how it feels a bit extra simplistic. Because when people ask us, or when they ask you, perhaps, what is the vision for this ministry? What is the vision for this church, or this school, or whatever? They're not always asking what's the next mountain that you're going to climb. They mean something else. They're saying something broader than that. And what they're asking, I think, is a bit of a composite of lots of these questions. And it depends on the person and it depends on the context, but sometimes they're asking for you to package the highlights of all these questions and smush it all into a thing and tell them that. They're actually wanting to know about purpose and values and maybe even strategy. And they want to know a bit of mission and flavour and perhaps even a bit of foci along the way, as well as what's the next mountain that you're going to climb. And so, in other words, the picture of the preferred future that they're asking for is like the broadest terms possible. They're asking, what kind of church are you and will you be? They're asking, what are the main things that you're doing? What mountains are you aiming at as you head into the future? And so what I'm saying is, people use the term vision very dynamically. Sometimes it's very narrow, what's the next mountain? And sometimes it's broad, what are you and what are you trying to do and how do you go about that? And so when people use the word, it can be quite rubbery. And when I use it across this conference, it'll be a bit rubbery. Sometimes I'm going to mean the little one, mountain, other times broader. Sometimes it's a narrow picture, right? Like near vision. Just a narrow, close-up picture of the preferred future. Sometimes it's long vision. Just a few of those. Purpose, mission. Sometimes it's like peripheral vision. It's like, give me the whole thing and even things you're not even really looking at. Tell me the whole thing. But either way, whether it's short, long, peripheral. It's still the picture of the preferred future. That's, I think, the key. So, that's what we're talking about when we talk about vision. And this is going to set us up really for the rest of this conference. These questions, picture of the preferred future, that's the undergirding of now everything else that we're going to come back and do. When we come back, we're going to talk about why vision is important and what it's doing and what it helps us do. So we'll come back and do that. But first of all, one of the things that we like to do here at Hustle is after every talk like this, I've been to conferences and so much content, and they're just like cramming it at me, and it's just like a big kind of piece of meat, and I'm just trying to swallow it as best I can. So just to help us all to swallow, after every talk like this, we just pause for a bit and we talk about 1, 2, 3. And the one is, what is one concrete takeaway that you have from what we just talked about? Maybe it's the main point, maybe it's a side point, maybe it's an offhanded, doesn't matter. What's the one thing for you that'd be like, yeah, I can implement that. I'm going to implement that. That'd be the most important thing. What's the one thing? And then 2, what are the 2 roadblocks that might get in the way of you actually doing that? Most important thing, 2 roadblocks. And then 3, what are the 3 concrete next steps? Because, like I'm going to go home and there's going to be a million things that I need to do. I got to buy socks and I got to do all kinds of things. And so I'm going to need concrete things. I don't want to have to go home and then try and think about what I need to do. I need to know I can just walk into my office and do the things. So not vague things, like think about vision, but specific things. I'm going to send this email. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to, concrete, so you can not even think about it and then implement it. So 1, 2, 3, we'll give you like a couple of minutes to do that, and then Miles is going to help us understand what we're doing for lunch and how that's going to work.